Hi, first grade scientists. This week we're going to be talking about animals and their structures. What we're going to start by understanding is that animals have different body parts. And we're going to think about how each one of those external, outside body parts helps an animal survive in its habitat. So as you can see on this PowerPoint, I did not make this, another teacher did, but I think it's really well done, so I'm using it. It shows a lion and it is asking the question, how do they help animals survive? What body parts does this lion have to help it survive? So that's the question that's going to start our brain learning today. There are many different types of animals on our planet. We have birds and fish and insects and reptiles and mammals. And as you can see, just looking at the pictures on this slide, there are lots of different types of animals and lots of different body parts that they have. The body parts of a puppy are very different from the external body parts of a fish. The external body parts of a butterfly are very different from that of a reptile. So, how the animals survive with their body parts varies greatly depending on what body parts they have. We all know that every animal needs to be able to get food to stay alive. They need to be able to get water to stay alive, and they need shelter or a home. And their body parts will help them to acquire and get all three of these things. Now let's look at this picture of a squirrel. What parts can you name on this animal? And I'm going to pause here for a second, and I want you to pause the video, and I want you to do some thinking. So pause the video and answer this question. All right. I hope that when you pause the video, you were saying that this animal is a squirrel, and there's many different body parts you might have talked about. You might have said it has ears, it has eyes, it has a nose. I see it has whiskers. I notice it has a big fluffy tail. I notice it has fur. There's lots of body parts on the outside that we can see. Let's move on. Here's another animal. This is a hummingbird. What parts can you name on this animal? So I'm going to ask you to pause this video and answer the question. All right. So thank you for pausing. So now we can look, and maybe you said, I noticed that this hummingbird has a beak. I notice it has eyes. I notice it has wings. I notice it has a tail. I notice that this hummingbird has feathers. What about the elephant? Same thing. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and to look at the body parts that you can observe on the outside of this elephant. Pause the video, please. All right, some of the things that you might have said that you might observe the elephant's trunk, you might observe its tusks, its big eyes, its huge ears, its wrinkly skin, its large feet. You might observe its little tail. So even the three animals we just looked at, they all have very different body parts. Now here's the last one we're going to do like this. Here is a killer whale. Go ahead, pause this video, and look at this animal to tell me what body parts you can see on the killer whale. Thank you. So I can see fins, I can see a tail, I can see some eye holes, I see a head area. And so this one's a little more difficult, but it is another animal that we can look at, and we can continue to think about all of the different body parts it has. So here is a slide which shows many of the common animal body parts. Now, it doesn't mean that every animal has these, but these are some common external body parts that we would be talking about. A lot of animals have shells. A lot of animals have horns. A lot of animals have feathers or wings or fins or fur or scales or gills or talons. Some have claws, beaks, and tails. So I want you to pause the video in a second, and I want you to try and think of some examples of animals that you already know in your brain that have some of these body parts. So for example, if I pause the video, then I could say a fin. I know that fish have fins. I know that dolphins have fins. And then I could look at shells. I know that snails have shells. And I could then name some other examples. So please pause this video and name some examples that you can think of that have some of these body parts. Thanks for pausing the video and doing that discussion. So now we're going to play a little game. It's called Name That Animal. This is a little bit of a quiz. So we're looking for an animal that has antlers and that begins with a D. It looks like this. Does anyone know? You can shout it out at your screen. It's a deer. Next, we have an animal with a horn that begins with an R. It looks like this. Shout it out if you know it. A rhinoceros. Here we go, an animal that has gills and begins with a G. Here's a picture. Goldfish. An animal with tentacles that begins with an O. Here's a picture of it. This might be a little more tricky. It's an octopus. An animal that has hooves and begins with a G. Anyone know what this is? Shout it out at your screen. It's a goat. An animal with paws that begins with an L. Oh, I think I know. Here's the picture. It's a lion, that's right. An animal that has a tail that begins with an M. I'm thinking. Here's a picture for a hint. A monkey. An animal with scales that begins with an S. Here's a picture. Ooh. A snake. An animal that has a shell and begins with a T. Oh, I think I know what it is. A turtle. Oops, I gave that one away. It's a turtle. An animal with fur that begins with a D. I think I need the picture. Oh, I know. A dog. An animal that has tusks that begins with an E. It's an elephant. An animal with claws that begins with a C. I'm thinking, boys and girls, and I'm having a hard time. Claws that begins with a C. Let me see the picture. Oh, a cat. So scientists, now that we're done kind of getting our brains thinking about different animals and their body parts or their structures, I want you to get excited about the rest of our learning for this week. We are going to be looking at many different animals and understanding what their body parts do to help them survive. Thanks for joining me today. Talk to you soon. Bye.